Hey everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to make a card using some paper rose bits and pieces. So we've got this topographic die, and we're actually going to emboss it. So you need your, depending on what the machine is, you need a plate for what you would normally do for an embossing folder, and then an extra rubber mat, and that's going to give you the imprint rather than actually cutting it out. So we're going to use some Stormy Sky and some walnut stain, and I'm being very intermittent of where I'm putting it on. I'm not trying to look for a smooth texture at all. So we're going to trim off some of that, and then I'll go back in and add some more of the walnut stain down because I'm going to cut most of it away. So that's going to be our ground, and I do come in and trim that all off. So I've put some of the Stormy Sky on the cream panel of the smooth night white, not white, it's cream, smooth night, I think that's what it's called. Anywho, some cream cardstock. We're just going to trim this down a little bit because it's a little bit longer than what I want. I end up trimming that down to 14 point, well, it actually ends up being a little bit less than 14.1, so it's probably about 14 by 9.7. We're going to go back in with a little bit of the Stormy Sky. Now, I'm not worried about that, the walnut stain that was left there. Like, I've cleaned it up now, but at the time I wasn't worried about it because it's just going to add to that dirty, messy look. So we've got that down the bottom, and that's going to be flat on our panel, and I'll trim off that little bit on the side. So that's where the 0.1 centimeter comes into play. Just having to think about what I'm going to do there. I'm trying to decide on what I'm going to do, but I decide to go against it. So we have E75, 79, 57, E35 and 31, and I'm going to map in my dark colour like I normally do. So where the laces are going to be, underneath them is going to be a little bit darker. There's usually a little bit darker for me around the edges, so it gives it that rolled over look. And at the back, that was what I was going for, to have the back a little bit darker. But you'll see once I put all the other colours down, it really still lights up the shoe. It's not going to look as dark as you think it's going to be. So I'm going with that worn look, hence we've got sort of the toe marks on the top of the shoes. And when I put down this lighter colour, this one here, you'll see that it will just lighten up the whole thing, because I'm going to go back over it a little bit with some of the shadows, and then we'll work our way through from darkest down to the lightest again. And it looks dark there, but it's actually really, really not. And hopefully you'll be able to see that in the photos at the end. So I'm just going to colour this shoe. I'm going to colour this one shoe. There's a little bit involved in it, and I'm just thinking about where the shadows might be. So that heel, that's right underneath, the part that's right underneath the shoe is going to be dark. And we're just, as I said, we're going to give it around the edges the shadows, just so we can have that dimension into the shoe. This one I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do with all the laces and that. And the laces, I just did one solid dark colour of E79, because there was so much texture and depth going into the rest of the shoe. I just decided that it was really not a big deal. And I thought if it was a solid dark shoelace, then that might help it to define it rather over the rest of the lighter shoe. So again, up around the back, sort of the inside of that shoe as it curves around. Clearly I didn't put my phone on silent. Is going to be a little darker in the center, and then fill in all the gaps basically. Like down into the shoe is going to be a bit darker. That's what I look at it as. So I'm just putting some shadows underneath the shoelaces just to help them to define. And it's a really interesting combo because it really comes out a lot lighter than, like, it looks dark, but in real life it's a lot lighter than it looks there. So what else can I tell you while you just watch me colouring in a shoe? So I'm going to do the other shoe off camera. So as I said, going back to the embossing folder, your plates that you would normally use for embossing folder. So with the Cuttlebug, you've got your big A plate and 2 B plates. As I said, you just need to put the rubber plate, it's not really a plate, the rubber mat in between the 2 B plates. Have your cardstock on top of your rubber mat and then the die on top of that. And that will give you your imprint rather than having the die cut out. On the Big Shot, you use your big plates and you open it up to the embossing. And the same thing, you're going to have your 2 plates, the big white plate opened up for the embossing folder, your 2 clear plates with the rubber mat in between, the cardstock, then the plate, the die cut, or the die I should say, and then the clear, another clear plate, and that will give you your embossing. You get more use out of your dies. That's all I can say. Get more use, get more bang for your buck. Now I thought this topographical die was really quite cool, but I've seen a lot of people just do it straight. So I finished there. Now I have grabbed a marker. Now you can use anything. I just didn't really think about it and just grabbed a Stampin' Up marker, but it's basically a Tombow marker. So the Tombow markers, distress oxide markers, anything that's water-based, just to go across the edges and working from the back. Now I do change this a little bit in there, but the colour is really dark, so if I was to slip, it wouldn't really matter too much at all. And it's a super thin little line. So we're just defining that and just giving it off that finished look. So that's really cool. So I'm going to figure out where I want to play things. Do I want them around the right way? Do I want them upside down? And don't worry about it, the heels are actually going to be on the ground. They're not going to be supernatural. So I'm using this Darkroom Door Paint Splats stamp, and it's got, as I said, it's lots of paint splats. So I'm just doing 1st and 2nd generation stamping on this, and we're going to, as I said, we can go and put the shoes down as well and put some texture onto the shoes, just a little bit here and there, and I'm still playing around with where I want these things to go. So it gives it that little bit of a dirty look. These shoes are really, really cool. Like, the stamp is really, really cool. So I really quite enjoyed myself trying to figure out how to colour that. Now, do I put them like they've just been kicked off? Nothing felt right, so that's how we're going to use it. A few of my cards have been a similar sort of thing with the image lately, but with the men's cards, you're sort of doing them that dirty or that scenic sort of look. So we're going to glue that flat onto the cardstock, and I'm going to use some foam. That's just a bit of offcut from the edges, some foam to mount that up. You don't need to plaster the whole thing with foam. I tend to do that sometimes with my base panel, but you don't have to. That's just, honestly, probably me being lazy. We're going to mount that up onto some craft. Well, it's not going to be raised. It's going to be flat, obviously, because I've just glued it. Before I put that down onto the card panel, we need to stamp the sentiment. Now, nothing felt right to add a little banner or anything like that because it's just a men's card. So we've got this Thanks Heaps mate out of the same stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that down again with the Rich Cocoa, and we're going to ink that up twice and stamp that down. Really, I could have just done it once. That was pretty good, but I decided to go in twice. See, that looks pretty good. That's basically it. I'm not really going to, so we've got this scrunchy look. I'm not really going to put any bling on it or pearls or splatter. We've got the splatter from the stamp, and that's going to be it. So check out Leslie's website, which will be linked down below. Have a good week. Take care. Be safe. Talk to you soon. Bye.